I will speak about the evolution and future of biohacking, but you can't really speak about the future without going to the past and understanding why we do biohacking. So in all living life, there is certain principles: sacred geometry, self-similar evolution, fractal geometry that is repeating itself on multiple different layers from the microcosm to the macrocosm. And if you look at the evolutionary web, which almost looks like this kind of beautiful shell, kind of evolving and expanding on its own, starting from the ancient bacteria, eukaryotes, going to plants, fungi, proteomes, etc., up to the higher primates, and we are kind of in the end of that evolutionary path. We are integrating all of that. We are eating. We're kind of taking parts of that are actually inside of us. We're holobionts, in a sense. What is a holobiont? It's a superorganism that integrates all living life. It's kind of an ecosystem. So when we divided from single-cellular organisms to multicellular organisms and all of that, we adapted capabilities of the living organisms in our environment. So for example, there's a lot of discussion about mitochondria. Actually, what produces energy in the center of a mitochondria is an ancient bacteria. And so what is interesting also, if you look into your gut, in your gut microbiome, without the ancient eukaryotes, like, we wouldn't be able to have that beautiful ecosystem. So we're kind of like, and if you think about it, there's an intelligence in you that is not you. There's actually more foreign DNA material, alien DNA material in your body than there is your own, because there's all these microorganisms that outnumber your own unique individual cells. So it's just beautiful to look at this whole map and kind of understand where we're potentially going. We survive in a very narrow ecological spectrum where life is even possible. We're extremely, extremely resilient species, but we are also absolutely fragile. And a lot of the biohacking that we do is actually to kind of play a little bit with that fragility. Of course, the aim is to become anti-fragile, that you become kind of hard to kill, what resilience actually means. And the way you do it is you kind of play a little bit with this ecological, chamber, in a sense, that you're in. And if you look into any forest floor, any kind of ecosystem, in all of them, you will find my favorite spirit animal, which is the tardigrade, the water bear. So kind of channeling its energy is what biohackers really do. Because what tardigrades are, there's some of the species that have been on this planet probably longer than anything else. And they're in all different places on this planet. So if you go to the polar caps, you find tardigrades that survive in minus 273 degrees Celsius. As humans, when we do something like ice bath or heat alteration, if you think about it, we can't really survive very long in that ice bath. A few minutes is already when you're triggering those beneficial, healthy adaptations that it provides. But hypothermia kicks in once your core temperature drops under 35, and that cold becomes life-threatening when it goes to lower than 28 degrees Celsius. Now, tardigrades also survive in volcanoes. Not necessarily like the very, very core center of it, but if you look at the temperature, 151 degrees Celsius. I'm from Finland, and sauna culture is one of those biggest things in our culture, and I basically do that every single day. I'm 41 years old, and I look pretty young, and I haven't done any kind of crazy stem cell therapies or anti-aging creams or any of that. So I attribute the most of the benefits to regular Finnish sauna use. I also use an infrared sauna, but it's not really a sauna. It's actually it's kind of like, sauna is like a word like champagne is not kava, or, something like cheese is not feta. Feta comes from certain area, and like in Greece, and champagne comes in a certain area, just like Ibero ham comes from a certain area. So like these are kind of preserved words. So you shouldn't use sauna for infrared cabin. It's like a infrared hot room. Also, the kind of the technology is different. The mechanisms are slightly different. But when you look at it, like 30 minutes, you already get most of the benefits of staying in a hot room. Now, the physiological benefits of cold exposure and also heat exposure is the production of heat shock proteins or cold shock proteins. These proteins were discovered when they exposed cells to extreme temperatures and extreme temperature alterations, and they noticed that the cells were producing this kind of self-preserving mechanisms, these proteins that go in the cell and they kind of try to maintain the integrity of the cell. So they kind of are the garbage collectors. And it also actually happens with radiation. There's a lot of discussion about EMF protection and radiation being bad and all of that. But by the way, there is the cosmic radiation constantly on the background, and there is a good body of research that shows that healthy, moderate exposure to radiation is actually increasing the resilience on a cellular level similar to heat and cold. So personally, I don't buy, this like fear-based approach where we're afraid of, everything that potentially kills you. There's so many things that actually make you stronger. And what this is called is hormesis. These are hormetic stressors that stress your body, and the adaptation that comes out of it is where the health benefits come from. For example, the activation of different genetic pathways, epigenetic pathways like FOXO3 that regulates genes that fight cellular aging. You don't activate these things unless you expose yourself to moderate amounts of stress. Now, exercise is a good example. You're damaging, the muscles, but that actually starts the cascade of hormonal and biochemical metabolic adaptations that then leads to muscle growth or better endurance and strength. And if you don't, stress the muscle, none of that is going to happen. Same with your brain if you want to learn something. Now, the beneficial effects of Finnish sauna bathing are incredible, what we biohackers look at, improvements in blood pressure, lowering of inflammation, improved immune system function. If you go to sauna once a week, you will increase the production of white blood cells, part of your immune system, by 60%. And you also reduce your risk of seasonal flu by 60%. Now, tardigrades, they survive in the ocean floor down to 4.7 kilometers. And if we try to hold our breath, all this breath work where we practice, CO2 tolerance and all of that, hypoxia kicks in after, your blood oxygen saturation is lower than 88. And you can kind of train for this. The world record is now about 24 minutes. And that was, by the way, one of my team members, Veronica. This is what we do in Finland. Like every day, she just wakes up, swims under the ice, and starts the workday. So if you want to get these benefits to maximize autophagy, the way how the body is recycling damaged cells, what you do is you do different stressful things. For example, you fast for 16 hours, you do exercise 30 minutes before, and then you do sauna for 15 minutes in 85 degrees, repeat 3 times. In between, you go in the cold, and you always finish with cold. There is this idea that you shouldn't do ice bath if you do exercise, for example. But what we are doing here, we are trying to trigger the longevity, not the muscle growth. If you want to trigger the muscle growth, you just exercise, you go to sauna, and that's it. And you maybe go to an ice bath 1 or 2 days later. But if you kind of keep on doing this, you might not become like a big guy in a sense, but at least you dampen the inflammation, but you're triggering all those longevity-promoting benefits. Now, tardigrades also withstand toxins and 1,000 times radiation compared to humans. As humans, we also like to play with radiation a little bit. So, for example, sunlight is a good example. The other one is red light therapy. So daily red light and infrared light therapy has been part of my routine for the last 10 years. And what it does, it actually stimulates the production of ATP in mitochondria, those ancient bacteria right there. So because this wavelength of light, it penetrates through the tissues, and on a cellular level, it activates something called cytochrome C oxidase that produces energy. Now, tardigrades also survive without water for 120 years easily. As humans, that's basically a lifespan. So tardigrade can just easily, live 120 years without water and keep on going while we die. Now, I told yesterday that the life expectancy of humans is dropping now because of modern lifestyles. We are no longer resilient. We're not exposing ourselves to stress that would lead to those positive adaptations, not just for future generations, but also in your own life that would promote longevity. Now, tardigrades can have a vacation on top of Mount Everest. I'm not a beach guy, as you see. I like to be in the darkness in my own cave. But when I go for vacation, I usually go hiking on the mountains. Now, tardigrades can withstand 1,200 times atmospheric pressure, easy. Now here, you can go to OxyHelp, and you can have hyperbaric oxygen therapy, voluntarily exposing yourselves to pressure. And it kind of makes the air molecules smaller and smaller, and if there's any hypoxia in any areas in the body, it will provide oxygen delivery in those areas, and has incredible anti-inflammatory effects as well. Now, tardigrades are some of the most beautiful, complex creatures that have lived here. They can basically survive just fine in space. So maybe they came here from space. Just like mushroom spores may have come here from space. Who knows? I mean, they can also withstand extreme pressures. So who knows where the intelligence came to this planet? But we have to be more intelligent, as species if we want to survive. And biohacking is not about, pushing more gas on the pedal. It's not about faster, stronger, being better, superhuman, all of that stuff. It's not that. It's actually about training resilience. It's training homeostasis, training balance. It's about, stimulating and playing a little bit with that ecological narrow spectrum in which you can even exist. And it's always about kind of pushing the envelope a little bit, almost like trying to make a little bit space and then coming back into the center before you burn. Now, obviously, we want to become tardigrades, right? So how do you become a tardigrade? So maybe we can genetically modify the human organism, which Chinese are doing. They're taking tardigrade DNA and putting them in human cells to make them super soldiers that can withstand, extreme temperature, alterations, radiation, and all of that. Maybe that's the future of humanity. Or maybe we have to kind of look at, what made tardigrades tardigrades? What was the environmental, interaction? Kind of what kind of stress did they need to go through to actually become, tardigrades? And that's where, your own habits and behaviors come into play. And so we released the HoloHabits application yesterday. And so if you haven't downloaded it yet, just scan that QR code. There's, best advice from me, Dr. Olli Sovijärvi, Siim Land, Lee Evin. There is Inka Land, and much, much more coming on the app. Speakers from this conference, where you can start, doing these healthy habits every single day. And even here, if you download the app, you can actually, you get access to all the information and content that we have produced in, one decade, the Biomarker's Handbook and all the content we have ever produced, all the courses, everything is here, and it's an expanding library. And we have also launched, alongside with the HoloHabits app, the biomarker test kit, the HoloHabits biomarker test kit that measures all the key things, including NAD, the cellular energy production, and also the key vitamins and minerals and fatty acids and amino acids and so on that are highly relevant for longevity. And then you can also do a DNA kit. There is the self-decode DNA kit that provides deep dive into, your genetic code, your tardigrade code, in a sense. What is good for you? What type of exercise is good for you? What kind of food is good for you? And so on. So you can kind of combine both of these for longevity promoting benefits. Now, we are finishing a new book called The Resilient Being. This is the sequel for the Biomarker's Handbook that we started writing 10 years ago, which has become very, very popular. I don't know if there's any more copies left, but the Resilient Being book will be shipped early next year. If you have already pre-ordered it, awesome, but you haven't, get this book, because it's really a deep, deep, deep dive into how do you build this resilience, not just from a physical standpoint, from a biology standpoint, but also mental and social resilience. And it has a good amount about expanding consciousness, elevating consciousness. So how do we build spiritual resilience, and how do we build basically like deeper understanding of ourselves as part of a species? Like, how do we make this species really thrive and survive future? Now, we are in kind of a bifurcation point. We can't go to the future with the same rules and same behaviors and same, societal interactions and systems and technologies that got us here. In a sense, we need to, of course, we carry a lot of that with us. But like Einstein said, we can't go to the future with our eyes in the rearview mirror. We have to become more aware, more conscious how we conduct ourselves. And so ultimately, we try to live long here. It's all about longevity, but we will all die trying. So then the question is like, how do you die, in the most tardigrade resilient way every single day? And that's what shamans do. That's what samurai is ready to do any minute. Basically accepting death is part of it. Playing with it on the boundary and appreciating life to the fullest. Because, we are all part of the web of life. Thank you very much.